All right, well, we'll start again with silent prayer. Amen. Okay, so we left part 1 with the question, where do we mark the judgment of the living in our time? So, oh, sorry. Okay, so I want to take us back to 2018. And we're at the Italian International Camp meeting. And Elder Pumpkin is going to enlighten us on a number of topics.
Dal nám svetlo na viacero tém.
One of them will be time setting. And the other will be on the judgment of the living. Our vows, vow number, where did I put them? Sorry. It's vow number 21 and vow number 24. They teach that the judgment of the living began on September 11, 2001. But like all our truths, our beliefs,
Všetky naše pravdy,
we understand, we get more detail the closer we get. So what Elder Parminter did was he took the judgment of the living to the line of agriculture. So 1989 is the time of the end. And a message arrives to tell us that judgment is coming and you're not ready yet. So we begin to plough in preparation for sowing seed. And we mark that as September 11. Empowerment of the first message, arrival of the second and third. So we need rain,
to bolo
showers.
Zmocnenie prvého anjela a príchod druhého a tretieho. Sorry.
We need rain and showers to germinate the seed. First the blade, then the ear. The latter rain will bring that ear to maturity. Where the fruit will be ready for harvest. And then it will be gathered to the heavenly silos. and Barnes or Garner. Yeah. So the transition between early and latter rain is the Sunday law. And what Elder Parminder pointed out, because we teach that the judgment of the living began at 9/11, is that there really isn't any fruit to judge in this period. The farmer will come out and watch the growth of the blade. And then the growth of the ear. And we mark this as record taking. Which is essential in any investigation. It's not until the fruit has developed that you can start judging. You can go out every day and start judging that fruit. So I'm just wondering, is my... Sorry, okay, sure. There is fruit before the Sunday law, but it's only going to ripen under the latter rain. That's the period when you can start judging the fruit as it begins to ripen. And so while it's correct to mark the judgment of the living at 9/11, it's more correct to see its fulfillment at the beginning at the Sunday law. And so I'm suggesting that Sunday law began on July 18, 2024, during the Republican National Convention. And if this is Sunday law, then it must mark another phase in the Day of the Day of Atonement. The Day of Atonement, we have been in the Day of Atonement since October 22, 1844. But Sunday law begins a different phase of a different movement within the sanctuary. The judgment of the living. So what should we expect to see at this waymark? What of the Hazon vision will help us to understand the Marae? And that is when we see oxen. or Apis bull. When we see the counterfeit, that is going to indicate to us that we are watching Babylon. Babylon is a mixture of dragon, beast, and false prophet. Those three elements were present at the Republican National Convention. We saw the mixing of Catholicism, apostate Protestantism, atheism, all the isms that represent Babylon. Because Babylon is confusion. And all those elements were present at the RNC. The Apis bull, or the bullock, was on full display. And when we see that fulfillment of the seventh kingdom, as the image of the beast was revealed, that tells us to lift our eyes to the heavenly sanctuary. That Jesus has begun a new work in that ministry. At the RNC in 2024, an image was made of the fifth beast. The fifth beast has resurrected in another form. It has not perished. It has been transformed. Just like pagan Rome had not perished, but was transformed into papal Rome. And when we see that oxen or that Apis bull, that counterfeit sacrificial animal, we note that the judgment of the living has begun. And Jesus said to Gabriel, make Daniel understand the moray. We are dealing with national and individual sins. The Day of Atonement was about restoring the relationship between God and their people. So the beast was fully exposed on July 18. And it was a combination of MAGA and Trumpism. The personification of Trumpism is Donald Trump. The personification of MAGA is J.D. Vance. Last week for the South African ministry, we reviewed the Munich Security Conference. That occurred in February of this year. And how Vance made a speech at that conference. That agitated the world. So I'd like to just talk a bit more about J.D. Vance. So I'm going to share an article. And this is a Politico article from February 20. February 20.
20.
So February 14, J.D. Vance gives the speech in Munich. That shocks the world. A week later, he's back in the States. And he goes to another conference. This is the Conservative Political Action Conference. Yes, so he is the first guest speaker at this conference. The heading is Vance finally gets the reception he wishes he got in Munich. That's can you, I've shared screen, Thomas, can you see? Vance finally gets the reception he wishes he got in Munich.
Vance nakoniec alebo konečne dostal prijatie, ktoré si prijal, aby dostal v Mníchove.
Surrounded by allies or friends, the vice president basked in his role as culture warrior in chief. Do I need to make it bigger? Is it too small?
What is basked? What is basked?
It's the share screen. Can everybody else see it, or is it?
Obklopený spojencami, viceprezident, neviem, čo je basked, vo svojej roli ako kultúrny bojovník, taký hlavný kultúrny bojovník. Neviem, čo to basked. Sorry, we don't know how to translate one word.
So when you bask, it's when you kind of lay out and enjoy the sunlight. Only the sun here is that's shining on him is his role. You know, he's basking in his glory. So I just want to read a couple of paragraphs from this article. When Vice President J.D. Vance delivered an eviscerating speech in Europe last week, that marked a hairpin turn away from decades of American foreign policy. He couldn't have had a less receptive audience. Just don't worry about the word eviscerating. I'll explain it in a minute. So it's saying that he wasn't well received. They didn't like his speech. First time an American has not received a standing ovation. That word eviscerating, it means to disembowel, to pull their guts out. Very strong. You know when you kill an animal and you take its innards out? You eviscerate it. It was a very harsh speech. Now, he really told them off, which is a nice way of describing it. So his audience didn't like his speech. But on Thursday, Vance brought that globalism bashing, culture warrior message stateside. So he's brought that message back to the United States. And solidified his role as the America First movement's communicator in chief. So I'll just write this up here. When you think of Donald Trump, he's the president. He's the commander in chief. And what this article is calling J.D. Vance is the communicator in chief. He's the one that explains clearly the ideology of MAGA. He says, I'm glad you liked it. Because the crowd at this conference are going to love him for the speech he gave in Munich. In Munich, it got more groans than clapping. Yes. but just a short mention of it at this conference caused the crowd of thousands to whistle and stand.
Ale
You
keď to
can't
len v
see what I'm
krátkosti spomenuli
highlighting?
tú konferenciu pred týmto davom, tak tisíce tam tlieskali a pískali.
Okay. So Vance is surrounded by the bastions or the protection of the conservative movement. That he and Trump helped shape into its present day manifestation. He and Trump helped shape this movement. Vance also
Pomohli vytvarovať to hnutie. Sorry.
Vance also appeared empowered to not just platform the administration's achievement, but to bask in his role as a MAGA prince. So Vance was empowered to not only tell the conference of all the wonderful things Trump has done, but he gloried in his own role as MAGA prince. So think of Donald Trump as king. J.D. Vance is prince. Okay, because Vance is their culture warrior. So I'm just, the Republican National Convention, it began with Vance on the 15th. It ended with Trump on the 18th. Those whole 4 days, the Apis bull was on display. It just increased in intensity until it was fully displayed on July 18. So J.D. Vance is culture warrior. What's culture? Culture is religion. This is our part of our Apis bull. He's MAGA prince to Donald Trump's king. Because princes are the sons of the kings. And Vance is seen as the heir to the movement. So Thomas, if you go to the notes that I sent, we just want to give a definition of culture warrior.
Elder Terrie?
Yes?
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
You are showing J.D. Vance as prince, and Trump as king,
Yes.
wouldn't. Mhm.
So I'm using the language of the journalists.
Okay. But doesn't it then indicate that Trump is above MAGA instead of the other way around?
That Trump,
Že Trump je ako keby nad MAGou, miesto aby to bolo naopak. Because we believe in King of the North, church should be over state. The prince is less than a king.
yeah, MAGA is using Trump. So it is church and state combined. So Trump is, think of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is both king and priest. Darius, he's both king and he is infallible. He makes laws that have no errors in them. And Alexander the Great, who is a demigod. So when we get to, say, Papal Rome, there is a clear distinction between the church and the kings of Europe. With what we're seeing today, it is all combined. So it's MAGA and Trumpism. And while we go in and we are looking at the different aspects of that, it is still one entity. It is all combined. So Darius had his enablers. People that put him on the pedestal. That guided his thinking. We see the same dynamics. What I want us to see is don't take J.D. Vance out of this picture. I'm not suggesting that J.D. Vance is pulling Trump's strings. J.D. Vance is very much obsequious or sucking up to Trump. And he plays a very big role in this political party. He is seen as the embodiment of MAGA. But he is a Republican senator. So he's very much a part of the new Republican Party. Trump is the head of the new Republican Party. but he also is a part of MAGA. So when we looked at verses 25 and 26, I think, of Daniel, we could see that those verses applied to pagan and papal Rome. So as we go in and we're looking at this movement in more detail, I'm not trying to separate things entirely. Just to understand a bit more of the dynamics. But it's all Babylon. Does that help?
I'm not sure.
So I'm just using the language of the articles.
I mean, yes, I understand.
To show the role of J.D. Vance, who's very much a spokesperson. He is not your typical vice president. You never saw Pence behaving or speaking like Vance.
Yeah, I don't want to keep more time, so it's okay. It's just I didn't understand. I thought we should be able to see MAGA as the one in control, but in the model of king and prince, the symbols are saying that Trump is the one who is in control.
In Daniel chapter 6, who's in control? Daniel chapter 6 is Sunday law.
Mm-hmm. Darius.
So it was all Darius's idea.
No.
He is in control. He's the one who signs the laws. You're right. He's signing the death decrees. It's his signature that's needed. But there's an ideology that is pushing him along. I would suggest that Trump isn't that deep in the ideology. He's not the culture warrior. At the international camp meeting last year, Trump was described as a barstool conservative. He doesn't care about abortion. So I would just suggest looking at Daniel chapter 6. As the same dynamics are at play here. So I'm just wanting to show that when we see the oxen, that it's bigger than just Trump. That convention ran over 4 days. The party platform and JD Vance opened day 1. The crowning of Trump closed day 4. That everything about that 4 days is significant. Even though we mark July 18. I point this out. One of the reasons I point this out is a lot of people's attention had been drawn to Elon Musk. And while he and all the other Silicon Valley billionaires are important players in these events, they are not, they're not, watch my words. They're not, they lobby the beast, but they are not the beast. So Elon Musk is part of the story. But I think JD Vance was overlooked. Because Elon Musk was the biggest story at the. So I just wanted to point out that JD Vance is considered a culture warrior. And culture is just another word for religion. And warrior is it's the army. Okay, so I'm just looking, Thomas, at the definition of culture warrior. To be a culture warrior means to actively engage in public debates or activism centered around cultural, moral, or social values. Typically in a highly polarized or confrontational way. Culture warriors view society as being in a struggle between opposing value systems. and see themselves as fighting to defend or advance one side in that conflict. And I've given a couple of examples here of J.D. Vance's statements. So regarding transgender issues, he said, if you look at what's going on in our schools, they're trying to turn our kids into radicals, into people who think they're different gender or hate their country. So we describe church and state as state nationalism. Nationalism being the religion. Vance's ideology is that if you are transgender, then you hate your country. So he ties what he sees as moral values to nationalism. He says of companies that are woke. That are promoting progressive social values. He says we need to seize the assets of these corporations that hate America. Again, if a company is being progressive, it's encouraging equality, then it hates the country. He ties that progressiveness in with nationalism. He does the same thing with universities. He says universities are the enemy of the people. They are the enemy of the country because if they're progressive. So the university's education system becomes a battleground for the culture war. He promotes traditional masculinity. He says, we are teaching our boys to be weak and feminized. He says the left hates masculinity. So just notice the strong ideology. He sees the decline of manliness as a cultural and moral crisis. So again, it's tied in with nationalism. And this can be easily seen in his views on immigration. He says, we have a massive illegal immigration problem. It's not just about economics. It's about the future of our culture. Again, immigration is a threat to American identity. All these issues he ties into nationalism. And yeah, so his views are very his views endorse Christian nationalism. America's problems are because people are abandoning religious and family values. So I'll leave it there about J.D. Vance. I think the point that Politico was making is J.D. Vance is the ideologue. He is the voice of MAGA, the communicator-in-chief, as opposed to Donald Trump's commander-in-chief. And this is what is moving and controlling the new Republican Party. When we see this Apis bull in full display, the image of the beast, the counterfeit oxen, then we need to lift up our heads because our redemption draweth nigh. Judgment has moved from the dead to the living. And we are steadily moving closer to the close of probation. So as we watch these external events, understanding the Hazon vision, it also gives us insight into the Marae. And Daniel needs to have both. Daniel 8 and Daniel 9 will help him to understand Daniel 11. So I'll leave it there. Perhaps if I said a closing prayer and then we have time for some Q&A.
Yes, that will be good.
Okay, I'll close in prayer. Our loving God in heaven, thank you for this time we've been able to spend together. In a lot of ways, I feel like Daniel. that these things are hard to be understood. Help us to open the books as Daniel did, to use all the tools and the information that you've given us. The methodology, the Bible, the spirit of prophecy, and our midnight cry message. To bring all these truths together to understand the day we're living. And teach us what it means to be living in the day of the judgment of the living. What are you requiring of us? That we might give you glory and edify the saints. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.